it is important to engage with socially inclusive education and to engage with young Romani, Gypsy, Traveller, Manouche, Sinti, Romanlar, Ashkali and Egyptian, early years practitioners and professionals. It's about promoting professional development for them through forming an international network with national networks supporting that international network. And it's about enhancing the profile of young Romani people working in early years education and care to ensure that the current notions which exist in early childhood development services, that Romani communities are there to be delivered to and are not people who themselves can deliver. It's about challenging that and changing that. It's also about supporting members of the network to be able to go on exchange visits, to be able to study, to access bursaries and scholarships, which means they can pursue their higher qualifications in education. And it's about creating the kind of international network which ultimately will have a role in advocacy, in terms of being part of the wider discussion and debate and demand for higher quality, sustainable, socially inclusive early years education and care. When I use early years, I'm talking about 0 to 10 years old. So the network is made up of Romani people and non-Romani people, importantly, who are working with Romani communities, because this is also about knowledge transfer. This is a network of people working with children in community-based settings, on home visiting programs, health visiting programs, preschools, nursery schools, early primary school. So it covers a wide range of provisions and services: health sector, education sector, care in institutions. So, the Romani Early Years Network was launched in Opatija in Croatia last October. And it was launched in partnership with the International Step by Step Association. Some of you may know ISA, Hristo does, and some others may know ISA. ISA is now 15 years old, and it's an international umbrella organization for the 31 step-by-step associations that exist in countries as far afield as Hungary, Georgia, Ukraine, Turkey, Poland, etc. And these associations in their individual countries are about promoting quality, professional development, access, but not just access, social inclusion, education for social justice, and the kind of tools in terms of self-evaluation and monitoring that people working in early years education and care need in order to be able to improve what they're delivering. Now, a key component of what ISA does as an umbrella organization is to deliver online training, to organize the kind of events which bring together members from all over the network, the ISA network, and provide the basis for lobbying and for advocacy with international organizations and with institutions like the Council of Europe, European Commission, etc. ISA currently hosts the Romani Early Years Network. And the Romani Early Years Network has, as you can see here, has a blog. It has, if you are a member, it has access to a whole range of training videos about working in early childhood. We are organizing a big training event that will take place in November this year in Budapest for members of the network. around quality and around child-centered working methodologies and pedagogies, and around social justice in early childhood care and education. There are also some exchange visits being organised. Initially this year there will be 2, and they will be close together. So Croatia members will visit people in Slovenia, and the Czech members are likely to go to visit in Slovakia to see best practice, to understand the implementation of early childhood programs in Romani communities. The future will see the kinds of study visits where we can support people travelling from Hungary to the UK to see the Shore Start centres, for example. We've already sponsored one international visit this year, which was the 6 projects that I'm supporting in the Czech Republic, 3 of which are in Ostrava. If you remember my presentation a couple of days ago, I talked about the DH case coming from Ostrava. 3 of the projects I support in the Czech Republic are based in Ostrava, along with 3 others, one in Karlovy Vary, 2 in Prague. Members of those projects went to Stockholm to see the Roma culture class in South Stockholm, to visit a number of different projects that are working in social services and early years education and care, and also to see to participate in a workshop with the teacher education course, the intercultural teacher education course at Södertörn University College, which is in South Stockholm, where a number of years ago I set up a short Romani studies course for teachers and pedagogues, which is still running. So that's the kind of broad outline of activities. There is also a Facebook page for RAIN, which is very, very active and has all kinds of communication between members, mostly around issues of identity and strengthening children's identity in the early years. We're looking at how we might, through RAIN, develop the kind of early years Romani language component, very important in terms of working in the early years. One of the things that we have really tried to focus on is the fact that many teachers from mainstream primary education and preschools will say Romani children arrive without the linguistic competence in the majority language. Now that is arguable, and much evidence would suggest that that is a prejudicial view. However, what is the case, according to many of our members, we haven't done a serious survey, but we would like to, but according to our members currently and from the network, what is the case is that many Romani children arrive at preschools with a very low linguistic competence all round, in Romanes and in majority language. And that strengthening bilingualism, particularly through strengthening their Romani linguistic competences and confidence, will of course, as lots and lots of evidence from the UK and the US has shown, and Hristo Kučkov's work has shown, will support and strengthen their competence and confidence in majority languages. So that's one of the things that we will be pursuing through the network, is developing kind of materials which will achieve this. So that's a broad outline. Now, the membership is open to everybody as individuals. It's not a group membership, so there's no organizational joining. We encourage individual professionals, practitioners, paraprofessionals to join. And we encourage people to join and participate both in the kind of contributions to the blog, so you can see the kind of contributions people make as individuals, and of course we encourage people to participate in the online trainings and in the online discussions about practice and quality, and in the the kind of reliability of practice and developing best practice actually in situ, in settings, in preschools, in community centres, on home visiting programs, which is more difficult. But we encourage members to support each other through using tools to assess quality of what their practice is and look at reliability with each other in terms of how they carry that out. This piece that's currently on the blog is about the latest national network to launch, which was the Traveller and Romani Early Years Network in Ireland. So we partnered with Eden, which is the, now I need to look at this to remember it. It's the Equality and Diversity Early Childhood National Network in Ireland, to launch a Romani Early Years Network that also picked up Traveller, Irish Traveller practitioners, paraprofessionals and professionals. There's some very strong practice going on in Ireland with Irish Traveller professionals, mostly associated with an organisation called Parvi Point. And they've been working for a number of years, very successfully in terms of advocacy. They managed to change Irish Republic government policy because until 2006, Irish Traveller education was entirely segregated. You may not know this, but in the Republic of Ireland, preschools and primary school and secondary school, if there was any secondary school provision, was entirely separate. That's now not the case because of the kind of work that the Irish Traveller professionals from organisations like Parvi Point have been able to carry out. So we now have an integrated, or I should say a socially inclusive, educationally inclusive education system in the early years in the Republic of Ireland. And it was important to recognise both the work of those people and to bring in a much wider perspective from RAIN. Now, traditionally, the geographies of interest for the Open Society Foundation across all network programs have been Central and Eastern Europe. Some interest in CIS states, some in Southeastern Europe, particularly in post-conflict situations, so Macedonia, for example, Albania, Kosovo. However, that's been fairly limited. And what I've tried to do in the years that I've been at the Early Childhood Programme and working with the OSF is to push for a much broader vision about who the Romani and Traveller communities are, a much more inclusive vision, and why, because of mobility and migration, and the impact of mobility and migration on Romani families and small Romani children, all Romani children, but I, of course, work with smaller Romani children. The impact of migration on those families and children needs to be taken into account, and we need to recognise that, for example, in the UK alone, our best estimates, which are not government estimates, they are individual local authority estimates, which are then put together as a whole, our best estimates suggest that there are 800,000 East European Roma in the United Kingdom alone. Now, we don't have any figures from Sweden, another place where I work, for example, but Roma NGOs in Sweden suggest that there are somewhere in the region of 60 to 70,000 East European Roma in Sweden, which doesn't take into account the 20,000 who come and go frequently, particularly during the blueberry picking season and the kind of agricultural cycle that happens in Sweden. So that's just two countries. Now, what we can see then is effectively Central East European, Southeast European Romani populations are massively moving. And what were initially concerns with focusing upon the traditional geographies no longer hold true. we have to start looking at Western European countries where people are migrating to. I'm sorry this keeps going on. I should have done that setting before I started, shouldn't I? So part of what the network is also intended to do is to raise the profile of this situation through looking at early childhood concerns for Romani communities from the traditional regions of interest, Central East European, Southeast European, CIS states, and start to push for a recognition that resources and support and attention, not just, and funds more importantly, not just from Soros, but also from people like the Bernard van Leer Foundation, from UNICEF, from Save the Children International, and from government, need to be focused upon this issue in terms of the fact that there are now very large numbers of East European Romani people, Southeast European Romani people, in Western Europe. The network is one of the ways of bringing communities together, of connecting communities. This is not about nation building per se, this is about the kind of exercise, I'm not sure if I agree with nation building per se anyway, but this is about the kind of exercise of building professional expertise and identities, strengthening those, and learning. There is much about the practice that East European, young Romani East European early years professionals and practitioners have, as much in terms of knowledge, particularly, and I'm going to quickly digress into some theory, particularly in terms of the kind of theories that were developed, which Christo referred to, Vygotsky and others, and Vygotsky school, around child development, very much from the East European perspective, which has been largely missing in terms of a theoretical framework in West European early child development, because we've relied on Piaget and Montessori and Brenner and the American theoreticians. So there is much to be learnt from practitioners, Romani practitioners in early childhood from East Europe, for Irish travellers and English Romani Charles and Swedish Reasander, as of course the transfer of knowledge back in terms of the kind of current thinking around early childhood development that is going on, particularly that's being developed by the African American communities, the Harlem Children's Zone experiences and theorizing from those experiences, for example. Much of that, I think, is applicable. So this kind of knowledge transfer is a very important part of the work. I would suggest that this a bit more about. So these are, for example, ignore the big bloke in the middle with the glasses. These, for example, Miroslav on the very left is a Romani man from Slovakia who is the first Romani head of a step-by-step organization. So he's one of the few Romani men in early childhood. There aren't many of us working in early childhood. But he's head of the Step-by-Step Association in Slovakia, has a very successful series of projects built around the ideas of parenting with confidence. He's working to support and empower Romani parents in very marginalized communities in eastern Slovakia. Eleanor in the middle with the red cardigan is the director of Parvi Point, the Irish traveller rights organisation in Dublin. Samantha is from Slovenia. She is a Romani PhD candidate. She also works in early years education. She works with Step by Step in Slovenia. She has set up the Slovenian network, the Slovenian Romani Early Years Network. Behind her is Colette Murray, who is head of Eden. And next to Colette are Kathleen and Marie, who are both Irish travellers. Kathleen works for Parvi Point and has worked as a primary health mediator, an excellent system that's been developed in Ireland, which we could all usefully learn from in terms of delivering primary healthcare information to traveller women in Ireland. Her daughter Marie who's on on your right, has just finished. She's the first Irish traveller woman to finish her leaving certificate at 18 in Ireland. She's going to get married. Like many Irish travellers, they marry quite young. She's going to get married in October, and I wish her well. But she is also, she has a husband who is happy to support her in developing her career as a community education mediator working in the Irish mainstream education system at early primary level. Now I'm showing you all of these and describing all of this to you because to some extent people may come to events like this with a number of different agendas. One of the agendas for many people is what can we do in terms of working with our Roma, our gypsies, our travellers. We have them in our classrooms, we have them in our communities, we actually don't know what to do. And one of the things I'm going to suggest to you is that what you need to do and what you need to be supporting is connecting with networks like RAIN, or you're very welcome to join RAIN, I hope you will. It's very easy, you send an email to membership@issa.nl and you can join. But it is to engage with communities in promoting members of the community as paraprofessionals and practitioners and supporting them to go on to becoming professionals, pedagogues, teachers, working in partnership with them, developing in partnership the kinds of materials that are going to be pedagogically sound and very useful in terms of working particularly, good morning Michael, particularly with Roma communities and traveller communities, gypsy communities, and then most importantly, and then documenting those experiences, those and the learning outcomes from them, in order to be able to share more widely. One of the critical issues around why things haven't changed radically in the way we would have hoped over the last 25 years is partly to do with the structure of funding projects, as we talked about with Latif Bey yesterday, but it's also partly to do with the fact that most of the projects that have taken place in education, particularly with Romani communities, have not been sufficiently documented. They haven't been evaluated. The learning outcomes from them are never disseminated. And to use a good Romani metaphor, we constantly go around reinventing the wheel. And we need to stop doing that. So, one of the ways to stop doing that is to document what you do and to evaluate what you do and to disseminate and share through networks, through associations like professional teaching associations, but ones that include and work with the Romani pedagogues and teachers and paraprofessionals, teaching assistants, etc. And it is ultimately that combination of non-Romani professionals and Romani professionals working together in education that will achieve real change and real shifts in equity and will result in the kind of inclusive education systems that we all want to see in place. Thank you.